I've yet to find a person in this industry who also doesn't love cars.
Let's get this going.
No, let's talk about cars.
I know we could do that too. The next HTA webinar are all about why 60s cars and old cars just look insane, right? They're just gorgeous. All right, everybody, welcome to today's webinar. We had a few months off. Now we're back at it. Give you all a chance to go on vacation and come back for some more learning. So today's topic, the DV-LED sound system conundrum. What about those front channel speakers? And because Dvled or DV-LED, whatever the heck we're calling these, doesn't really roll off the tongue, we're just going to call them video walls, just to make it simple on today. And I have special guests here that are joining us, industry friends, and a great group of people because of their background in this industry, manufacturers of excellent products, but also sound system designers, and the why of their products really kind of fit this topic very well. So we have Paul Hales, Pro Audio Technology and Theory Audio Design. Hey, Paul.
Hi, everyone.
We got Nick Fichte, if I'm saying your last name right. I didn't even.
Good enough. Good
Okay.
enough. I've heard much worse.
Okay, of L-Acoustics. And so we have an international flavor here today because L-Acoustics, a French speaker, but Nick is joining us from England today. So thanks for staying up or taking a little of your dinner time away to hang out with us, or as they say in England, tea time.
Yep, my absolute pleasure. Very pleased to be here.
And then and so Paul's in California like me, and so is Anthony Grimani from PMI Limited and Grimani Systems speakers. And many of you know Anthony as a system designer for many, many years. As long as I've been in this channel, I've known Anthony. So nice to have you here too, not only as a manufacturer, but also as a designer of these rooms, an acoustic engineer, system designer as well. Hopefully you've seen this in the newsletters that we've been sending out. We're having a HTA get-together at CEDIA Expo next month on September 5th, 5 to 7 p.m. The tickets are being paid for by us. It's called The Party. It's part of the Day of Discovery event happening downstairs at the Four Seasons Ballroom at the Colorado Convention Center. So you don't have to leave the facility. When you're done checking out all the cool stuff at the show floor, come down 5 to 7. But you have to register ahead of time. We have a limited amount of seats. There'll be HTA wristbands. Email me. I'll put my email in the chat if you haven't registered already. Let me know who you want to come from your company, and we'll get you signed up for that. Again, that's 5 to 7 p.m. HTA member perk. Drinks, hors d'oeuvres. It's early enough, so if you got the big parties you're going to later on, just come by and meet and greet and have a little fun. Video walls. We obviously know they are an ascendant popular category in the home theater and media room space, even outdoor, because of their brightness and such. But then there's the obvious side effect, right? These things are solid and you can't put the speakers behind them, which is the cinema standard that we've known for decades. So as we all know, when you go to a commercial cinema, the speakers are literally behind the screen, firing through it through perforations. So this has been an issue on the residential market. And if I took my notes right on our lead up to this, Anthony, I think it was 1995, you mentioned Stewart Film Screen, and you might have even been involved in that, came out with a micro perf solution. So we can, as home theater people, mimic what's happening in a commercial cinema in a smaller screen space and the sound fire right through that screen, right? So pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yep, it's 1995, so almost 30 years. So interesting. Now, even though that solution's been around for nearly 30 years, most front projection systems are not being installed with acoustically transparent screens after all. So maybe the problem we're solving today is not actually really brand new.
Yeah.
It's coming to the fore again, though, right? Because we don't have that option. So, for example, and I've done this when I was an integrator, where you might have a really nice picture window. We were talking about this yesterday, Paul, right? You have a great view of the ocean, and you're dropping a screen in front of it. Same kind of problem. Where's that sound coming from? It's not coming from the window. Right. So, yeah, issues that we're dealing with. So now here we are in this video wall world where we have to come, different solutions. So I will just talk about 4 solutions that I'm aware of that come from the lead up to this conversation, and then we'll get into some more details. because each one of these has a pro and a con, and I'll let the smart people in the room here talk about those pros and cons. But you've got basically 4 different ways to do this. Right and left channel, you have that already. So you can either use that as a phantom center by using the right and left, or maybe augmenting the right and left with another pair of speakers, but in mono, and that does the phantom center channel. So that's one solution. The other solution is put all the speakers in the ceiling for the front channels. Another one is right, left, augmented either with a center channel speaker above, below, or maybe even both. That's another option that can happen. Or a unique one too is bouncing the sound off the front, the front channel sound off the screen. Meyer Sound has been doing that for a while, and Anthony has his own solution called Sound Projector, if I said that right, Sound Projector technology. So that's another interesting way to do this. So the goal of this, all these different 4 solutions, is what we really want as an end result is audience uniformity. So enough people, not just the one person in the sweet spot can hear that phantom center, but a wider group of people in the audience could still hear the center channel sound localized with the action on the screen. So now I'm going to start shutting up and letting the smart people talk. Paul, let me start off with you on this. Like what and system designs and things that you've coming up, what challenges have you seen?
Yeah, so like historically, actually, our experience at Pro is a little different. Just about all the systems we've done over the last 20 years have had perforated screens. However, we didn't, when we encountered the inability to put the speakers behind the screen, it was usually due to some architectural reality, like you mentioned, right? Where there's a window there, it's a multi-purpose room, and the screen has to drop out of the ceiling, and you can't put a speaker where the window is, right? Stuff like that. So, and then recently we've certainly encountered video walls more and more. And so of the 4 solutions that you mentioned, I'll just tell you my favorite ones and why, and then maybe that'll inform a broader discussion. But my preferences for probably my first choice would be right and left outside the screen with the center channel above and below, and then you can bias the phantom image anywhere you want vertically within the screen. And since listeners tend to, we're all on the same horizontal plane, the phantom image will always stay in the center for everyone, right? It's not going to collapse into one or another. If you got down on the ground, it might collapse into the lower speaker. But you don't have the phantom image collapsing problem if you did it on the left and right. And then the other kind of version of that same thing is 3 speakers across the top and three speakers across the bottom. And then you can bias the image, the perceived phantom image, up to the whatever height you want in the screen. The big challenge, and we've encountered this just recently actually, is when the video wall goes wall to wall and floor to ceiling, right? I don't know if these other guys have encountered that, but when these clients are spending $500,000 on their big TV, they want it to be as big as possible. And a lot of times they'll take up the entire wall. And in that case, then you're really forced into the ceiling at that point. But I'm curious to see what these other 2 guys have to say.
It's funny, I'm in a lot of different CEDIA committees these days, and we talk about the 97. And I think Peter Aylett started to talk about, well, we've got to do this for 97% of the people. So Paul and my company, the products we make, the services we do, by and large, yes, we're addressing rooms that have an acoustically transparent screen. By the way, they're hardly ever micro-perforated. That worked fine in 1995. It's not very good today because there's too many issues with the perforations. Most of the good ones, including what Stuart does, are woven screens. At the high end of the market, not the 97%, but maybe the 3%, I would say unless there's an interference like a window, it is all acoustically transparent. However, I believe, Josh, what you were saying is probably right, that only 20 or 30% of the theaters put out there, either dedicated or media lounges, have an acoustically transparent screen. The rest of them have a projection screen that's not acoustically transparent for lots of different reasons, including that it's impractical. You can't put the speaker there anyway. There are people who believe that the picture quality suffers a lot from a woven screen. I haven't found that to be. I was just on another room recently with a woven screen and a 4K projector focused correctly. You could see the pixels on a woven screen. If you can see the pixels, you're not losing any resolution. But there's some beliefs that goes, yeah, the picture is not quite right. Whatever the reasons are, including cost, whether they cost more, those woven screens. I think that this is not a new problem. It's a persistent problem. And in the broad scale of the HTA membership and the CEDIA membership, probably the majority of projection systems are still non-acoustically transparent. And enter the video wall business, and it's the same issue. I think what's changed is exactly what Paul is saying, which is the person who's spending that much money wants just an enormous screen, even though it's way too big for enjoyment of a movie where you're kind of going like this as you're following the action. They just want an enormous and impressive one. So the issue is now exacerbated. And then when it goes all the way to the edge of the walls or the ceiling and floor, you have these new problems. So we've worked on this a lot, actually, for over the years, both as system designers and more recently as loudspeaker manufacturers. Can I share a quick presentation that kind of shows some of our options? Is that okay to do right now, Josh?
Yeah, sure.
Or stay general. We can just stay general and go into presentations later.
No, if you can bring it in now, that's fine.
Bringing it in. All right, let's just see if this works. So I am going to this. Can you confirm that you see getting cinematic experience in a media lounge, right?
You see it.
Okay, now I want to go to the thing I really wanted to start with. Sorry, guys. Punting. Going here, no, here. Oh my goodness. Wow. Sorry, I lost the start point where I wanted to be. Let me stop that share. Go back into the right viewer. I think I hit the wrong button for a second there. Bear with me a second. And here we are. Okay, sharing that again. Wow. Not collaborating. Getting there. These 2 minutes of meditative silence brought to you by. All right.
I could tell a joke. You want me to tell a joke?
Why don't you tell a joke? So this horse walks into a bar.
I'm going to offend everybody on the call. How do you get a residential AV integrator to complain?
Tell us.
Sell them something. It's a joke, guys.
Okay, yeah.
I love you guys, really.
Yeah.
33 attendees have left the call.
All right. Well, this is really interesting. I've not witnessed this before, but it's all good. All right. Back to Zoom. Please cooperate. Share this. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, This is not the new problem. I call it the constant center channel problem, also known as CCCP with a smile. So what's the issue here? Wow. Interesting. So I want to remind everybody of what we're trying to get. Ultimately, when we're doing a home cinema for a client, we're trying to get back to reference grade movie and music, which means that it looks and sounds like it did in the film studio or the music studio. There is a standard. There are some sets of standards we're trying to get there. One of the important ones is to have really clear dialogue. And playing big, bombastic, immersive audio with lots of bass, that's not so hard to do. You just need big speakers. But doing something where the dialogue is clear, the music is choice, that's a little harder to do. And doing it so that every listener in the room has the same experience, where the central sounds all seem to come from the middle of the room, no matter where you're sitting. That introduces other issues. So these large direct view displays, also known as video walls, introduce these issues, and there's a few solutions. So first off is, as a reminder, the ideal setup, and this is what Josh was saying in the beginning, where speakers are behind an acoustically transparent screen. Here's a room with a screen. You take down the screen. This is what you see behind the screen. Left, center, and right speakers are there. And when Brian talks, you hear him coming out of here, right? So option one, and you mentioned this, is, okay, well, we now have a video wall that's in the way of our center speaker. Let's just go with Phantom. Phantom has two issues. One, necessarily the mid-range ends up with a gap in the response. You lose a bit of mid-range clarity. That's a compromise. And so instead of Brian being clear, he's a little fuzzy. There are some solutions around that, and we have a process that we call Phantom Plus that's signal processing, and what we feed the speakers to clarify that error in the mid-range. The other one is when you move off axis to the left or to the right. If your speakers are not really wide dispersion and your room acoustics are not done correctly, is that Brian moves with you. So instead of being in the middle of the screen, he's moved over. There are some tricks in how you set up the speakers, what speakers you use, what dispersion you use, and what you do, again, with the room acoustics to mitigate this. You'll just never eliminate it. Next solution, like you said, is to put a speaker above or below the screen. We have not found really a very good result in a pair of speakers, because while you can time delay them to where there's one zone where there's not comb filters at one seated ear height, Paul's taller than me. It's not hard. I'm only 4 feet tall. So where he sits will be at a different position, and there'll be some mid-range comb filtering. If you have 2 rows in the theater, which would be offset by typically about 8 to 12 inches, you're going to have different arrival times. So the comb filtering between those 2 speakers will result in kind of some fuzziness in the mid-range, so dialogue will get a little affected by that. So we like to just put one speaker above or below. It does mean that the image of Brian will move up. You can mitigate that, interestingly enough, with room acoustics. If we have time, we can talk about it. There's a slight elevation, you need space, but really important, that speaker that is shown here as a horizontal needs to have wide dispersion, and that's where the gotchas start. A lot of manufacturers make speakers that are a pair of woofers and a tweeter in the middle that don't have consistent response off axis. They have comb filters in the middle. There's errors in the lobing of the response of the speaker. So you hear it nicely when you're right on axis, and you move one seat to the left, and you're like, why don't I understand the dialogue anymore? It's because there's actually gaps in the 2 to 3 kilohertz region from the interference between the woofers. This particular speaker I'm seeing showing over here is a 2.5 way speaker that gets around that in technical ways we can talk about later. Now, what do you do when the client says, nope, I want a screen that goes all the way up to the ceiling, all the way to the floor? Now you have to put speakers in the ceiling. There's no other way. And if you're doing that, you got to make sure you have a speaker that's got an angled baffle, some way to send the sound at an angle. We make some, Paul makes them. Forgive me, I don't remember what L-Acoustics does on this, but whatever you're doing as an integrator, you got to make sure that speaker's not firing down, but is firing out at the listening area, and expect the sound of Brian, the actors, to move up a little bit. There again, if you choose speakers with very wide dispersion and treat the room acoustics around the first bounce to have some amount of diffuse reflection, you can fool the listener into believing the sound is lower than all the way up there. We can talk about that, but that's another solution. Another solution is just to do the classic sound bar that people do. 3 speakers either above or below the screen. But please don't do this on a small one. If you only have a bar that's 80 or 90 inches wide, you're not going to hear the difference between the left, the center, and the right when you're sitting 12 feet away. So this starts to become a good solution when the bar or the group of speakers has a wide enough spread that you can hear the difference. And you got to make sure that the dispersion is really wide so that everybody sitting across the room does hear them. Finally, we have this thing that Josh talked about that we call reflectance is the system. There's a sound projector we put over the listener, slightly behind them, that bounces the mid and high frequency sounds off the screen. You can't do it broadband. It becomes way too big of a device to control the energy. But if you can bounce the mids and highs off the screen in a specular way where that angle needs to be the same, and then feed the lower frequencies as a phantom center to the left and rights, you can end up with something that's clear, that's invisible in the room, and works. We've done it several times. This is some renderings of the waveguide we make. And then if I go forward here enough, I'll show you an example of a room we just finished this in. I have a video of it, but this is a room in which all the speakers are in the ceiling. This is a stretched fabric layer up here. The left and right speakers are up here. The sound projector's up there, subwoofers, everything's up there. If you peel back the fabric, or if you take a picture before the fabric goes up, you can see it. Pair of our angled wedge speakers are handling the left and right channel, and the reflectance sound projectors over the seated position and bounces sound off the screen works remarkably well. I know it sounds like, how could that sound good? It sounds amazing. So, and I guess there I am going, yep, sounds good. So these are some solutions for these issues. Just to summarize exactly what Josh has said, phantom center, yes, no. If you've got a wide array of seats and speakers that don't have very wide dispersion, beware, because the sound's going to move as you move from left to right. A speaker above or below the screen, we personally don't really like a pair. I think one good speaker above or below can work well. I know other people do a pair. Speakers in the ceiling, make sure that they're angled, they're wide dispersion, and they're pointing at the listener. 3 speakers in a big bar or multiple speakers above or below the screen. And then finally, this reflection approach. Those are some ways to deal with all of this. Which is the right one? Well, it depends on the project. There's projects that are not suitable for the reflectance sound projector because of the geometry. There's projects that are not suitable for speakers above the screen. So you kind of have to like dig into it and do some creative engineering.
Thanks for sharing all those. And a question that came up is a little bit directed to you. Maybe you know about this theater, but if not, anybody feel free to answer this. What did they do for the sound imaging at the commercial Culver Theater in Culver City? If any of you guys know that. Anybody?
I have an inkling. I haven't seen it. Paul, do you know?
No, I don't know, but I would guess the Meyer solution probably, but I don't know.
So that's a good question. I have an inkling. Since I don't know, I'm not going to spread any rumors. How's that?
Okay,
Yeah.
So we don't know on that one. All right, but thanks. And
so can I jump in with a comment here?
Please.
All of the solutions that Tony mentioned are all valid, and they will all work to a pretty good degree. Actually, they all have compromises, but we benefit from the way our ear, brain, eye system works, right? So even if the speakers aren't ideally located, when your eyes see the person talking, your little cartoon guy there, even though the speaker's above the screen, when we see the head with the mouth moving in the middle, we kind of psychoacoustically bring down the sound, and it does make it seem like the sound's coming from the image. We're used to looking at somebody talking. And so even though these positions are all compromised in some way, there is that advantage, and it almost most of the time it sounds like it's coming from the pitcher. Not always, but most of the time it sounds like it's coming from the pitcher. So the compromises are mitigated a little bit because of that effect, right?
Yeah.
I think compromise.
I agree. You can. There's a small moment. Sorry, Nick. There's a small moment of adaptation, and then you just kind of accept it. I do find that there's a slight loss just of dialogue clarity, maybe because your eyes keep looking here, your ears are there, and somewhere in your brain you're going, well, I'm trying to connect the dots. I don't really know.
Hey, Nick, if you could share too, this L-Acoustics speakers is a huge name in really, really amazing sounding pro audio. And our lead up to this and talking to Nick, it was kind of interesting because, L-Acoustics is definitely in the residential space now, but going back to their roots, some of the problems that we're talking about placing sound with a video image is something that L-Acoustics was working on pro sound, right? Give us a little story about the concerts and making the sound match the musicians on the stage, and how your products also fit into this whole world. And feel free to do a screen share on any of the products that you want to help us visualize that as well.
This is something that I've thought about quite a lot, ever since video walls have kind of come onto the marketplace is, how do we do it? And I'm often surrounded, because of the company that I work for, by images like the one in my background here of concerts and events. And what do I see more often when I see that? I see a stage with artists on it, and I see speakers on the left and the right of the stage. And that's kind of when the company was founded 40 years ago. Christian, our founder, he was all about, back then, sound systems really were like the walls of sound, the kind of Grateful Dead things that you used to see. And Christian kind of, he thought there's got to be a better solution to that. And, he's got a PhD in particle physics. And that's where he kind of went ahead and started using line array technology for concerts. And that meant that LED screens could get even bigger. And actually, just to do a screen share, something which has been, there's a British artist, I'm not sure if anyone's heard of her before, called Adele, but she has been
Not familiar.
Adele, she's been in the AV press quite a lot this week, actually, and hopefully my screen is sharing now.
It is.
And you can see there, I actually snippeted a headline from AV Magazine's website where it's world's largest LED wall, stars at Adele pop-up stadium. So Adele has been doing this show in Munich for the last few weekends. And as you can see in that image there are no speakers in front of the LED screen. I forget how many attendees go to this show, but it's a vast amount. She's incredibly passionate about audio. Her residency in Vegas, we're using our Elisa immersive technology. And here, this show in Munich has also been using L-Acoustics technology. And what you can see is that the arrays are all hung above the LED screen, so you have no PA at all in front of the screen. Now, of course, you've still got people at the front of that audience there who will want to hear it as if, she stood right in front of them. So that's the technology that we have, and we use either variable curve technology or constant curvature technology. So in this image, obviously, it's using our much bigger speakers. That's K1, K2, L2, which I don't think we're going to put many of them into a residential theatre, although we have got some projects out there with some of the big stuff in, believe it or not. But so this is the same problem that we've been facing for a number of years and trying to kind of work out how we do that. And I thought, well, this actually goes back to a problem of many, many years ago of, if you've got a band on a stage, you want the sound to sound as if the instruments are coming from the instruments and the vocals are coming from the mouths. And so that's kind of been our whole, almost raison d'etre, to use a French phrase there. Sorry, it's the French company that's battered into my brain there, that of having this technology to be able to do it. So when we look at LED screens in a residential setting, or, we're calling them video walls to avoid it, the LED technology may change from LED. There's also other things. I mean, this is an example of a experiential building in central London called Outernet, where, again, every single wall and ceiling is all LED wall. And what we had to do there is use the reflective technology that Anthony talked about earlier, so that we could actually reflect off of that. And you can see just where you've got the walkways where you can walk in and out a bit. There are hangs of speakers below there, but smaller. And these are the ones which we're typically specifying into residential home theaters. So this is our A series. And these are fixed constant curvature line source speakers. As Anthony was saying, you kind of have some are very wide dispersion, some have narrow dispersion. Well, what we do is we have we have 4 variants. We have a 10-inch version, a 15-inch version. So depending on the size of the room, would depend on what size drive you're using for the SPL that's required. But then you have a focus and a wide, and when you stack them on top of each other, as the diagram in the top right is showing, it shows the directivity that you're getting. And we have a piece of software called Sound Vision, which allows us to basically map it in. So this is a project which we did a design for recently for a theater, which was a LED wall. And we use those A15i wides to be able to do that. Within our software, it then shows you at the listener position exactly what you're going to be getting in terms of SPL at the reference listener position. But then the real important thing is actually we can show from a side angle at exactly what angle those loudspeakers need to be to be able to get the coverage of the HF, because it's the HF that's really important to being able to do. So that software gives you that power to be able to do that. And I think we're using that same approach that we use in concerts, just within a residential environment, really. So it's, an age-old problem that's existed in concerts, and now we've got the same problems in homes. But I feel as if we're well equipped from our experience of doing this in live events for a number of years and experiential events and things like that, that we're well positioned to kind of be looking at it. But as Paul said, it's a compromise. But, this is always going to be a compromise unless we can have a speaker smack bang behind that screen. And we know, if you look at venues like the Sphere, for example, where it's all LED screen, there are drive units behind those screens to be able to make that happen. But the gaps in between the pixels are much bigger. That would never be good enough for a home theater environment, but because you'd be much closer to the screen. So yeah, that's our little take on it.
So brings up a good point, right? We have software solutions now to help design this and model rooms. And now another great related to this topic, but something that I know our panelists are really into as well too, because these companies are into, these are like pro audio dispersion, or that's the wrong word, pro audio performance as far as SPLs, but we're drawing analogies to pro audio. The spec sheets on pro audio speakers are way different than your average consumer stuff. Radiation patterns, frequency, how much SPL at certain frequencies are missing from a lot of residential speakers. The brands that we're talking about here have that data, and importantly, know the dispersion characteristics of that sound, which becomes really critical here. So that is something that's great that companies like this have come to the fore, and you could have this type of, if you know how to read those spec sheets and use the software like Nick was showing here, you could really model a room and know what it's going to sound like, instead of just winging it and going out there and trying to fix things later with DSP. And we did other webinars in the past about DCI level theaters, when you're basically building like a commercial, screening room in someone's home, and you have access to first run content from the movie theaters. They won't turn that system on. Like Dolby will not turn those on unless the speakers meet all those types of specification. So it's really important. But now we have this level of product all available to you. So it's exciting times. It wasn't so easy 10 years ago, but things have changed. So software is our friend.
Can I? So you're opening an interesting Pandora's box that's been bugging me for, I don't know, about 10 years or more now, which is why does the residential contractor not get the same level of specification information as the commercial one does? Lots of reasons, but there is a committee within CEDIA called RP1, Recommended Practice 1, which is planning to change that. So I lead that committee. I suggested it, so that made me a volunteer to lead the committee. That's how it works in trade associations. And its purpose is to list a number of critical elements that allow a system designer to do a good job for their client. And this covers audio and video, and not just home theaters. Anything that produces audio, be it a preamp switcher, matrix switcher, surround processor, amplifier, speaker, and on the video side, projector screen, all of those different things. So we're going to introduce that at CEDIA 2024. We're actually going to start presenting the results of that. But that thing you just said, which is a hallmark of the three companies over here. You go to our websites and you get all these charts and stuff that tell you what these devices really do, is now going to start to appear for other manufacturers. And CEDIA will teach classes on how do you interpret that. So when you're looking at a polar pattern of a speaker, what does that mean? What do you do with that? So RP1.
Yeah, it's great. This is a great evolution of our professionalizing our channel here, the CI channel, more into how things are done by the pros, making the commercial cinema, right? Bringing that flavor there. So we're going in a good way in that angle.
Can I build on that a little bit?
Please.
Yeah. So when we get a medium to large size room project, we actually reach for the Dolby Dart to design the room. So I'm sure that these guys know what that is, but in case the people that have joined the webinar don't know what the DART is, DART is DARDT, which is Dolby Audio Room Design Tool. And it's the tool that's used to design commercial cinemas, right? And so Pro is one of the handful of consumer brands that's actually included in the commercial Dolby Dart. So we actually use the Dolby design tool to kind of do what Nick was alluding to. It's not as fancy as that at all. It's really just a very elaborate spreadsheet, but it's the
Whoever
tool.
built that Excel spreadsheet is a very clever person.
Yeah, it's a very, very capable spreadsheet basically, but it does tell you based on Dolby's sort of Atmos requirements the number of speakers you need, where to put them, and it gives you all the performance, and you can verify that you're going to be able to hit the SPL and coverage specifications that they want to deploy an Atmos system, right? And so we're fortunate that we're in the commercial version of that because we can apply it to the larger rooms that we do, and that's what we reach for first. We have other tools too. Theory, our other brand, we use Ease Address, and we can use Ease to model some of this stuff similar to what L-Acoustics was showing. But I want to touch on something here because I probably differ from a lot of people in the industry where we kind of learned, we've been at this 20 years. This is our 20th anniversary this year in November. And we learned back, I don't know, probably 15 years ago or so that, it's probably pragmatically and practically speaking, and even from an intelligence standpoint, it's probably not smart to expect the AV integrators to be audio experts, right? So we got to walk this fine line where we're all audio nerds. So we're showing graphs and we're talking about very technical stuff. And, CEA 2034, as valuable as that is, and all the data and all that stuff. But it occurred to us years ago that the AV integrator is a generalist. They've got to know about shades and IT and video and sprinkler systems and security systems and telephony sometimes and stuff, right? And so when we started to expect them to be audio experts, it didn't go very well. And then it occurred to us that it's probably better if we're the audio experts, right? And so at Pro, we try to be the audio expert and offer guidance and do the heavy lifting for the integrator, all the while explaining what we're doing and why, and we give them supporting documentation. But I don't want the listeners out there to think that they have to understand audio engineering to deploy a good system. I think these brands on the screen can help them do that. And I was just looking at RP22. It's a fantastic document, right? It's a very well written, very thorough document, but it's a lot, right? So for an integrator to try to read 150 pages, absorb all that, imagine that the shade companies put out 150 pages of here's how you do shades in a house, and the lighting companies put out 150 pages of here's how you do lighting. It becomes overwhelming, right? So I just want everybody to understand that you can leverage us as manufacturers, but also consultants. Tony is one, right? You could leverage Tony to help design this for you. So you don't have to dive super deep in the technical stuff if that's intimidating, if that makes sense, right? Now, I may be unique in that position, but that's
exactly the same approach as I took when I joined L-Acoustics. I've worked in the residential AV industry all my working career, and I saw this as being went over my head pretty quickly when I was delving into it. Fortunately, I have a very good technical team, but I was like, there's no way the average integrator is going to have this level of in-depth knowledge and be able to understand the facts and the specs that are being produced. So we have to make sure that all of our documentation basically makes it really easy, and that we do the sales job for them for when they're presenting it to their customers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we want the integrators to be really good integrators and go deploy this system and win over the client and get approval and so that they can sell the next one and move on and be successful on the next project. So we don't want them to be distracted by the minutia of the audio. We want to assist them to get it right and then go on and do more successful integration, if that makes sense.
Those are great points for the audience to know that basically you're an extension of their sales team and like a technical resource to help them out, which is a good segue to, if you go to the chat on here, the emails for all three of our guests are here. So if you want to follow up and ask some things, feel free to still ask things here in the QA live, but here we go. You could ask the information. So that's good to know, right? You're not out there alone figuring this out, especially as things are way beyond 5.1, way beyond that now. And to get these systems designed to what they can be. And also another point that we've had in past HTA webinars, don't sell with your wallet here. I mean, these products that we're talking to these manufacturers here on the call are stunning. I've heard them. They are blow your mind stunning, and that is due to careful design that they could help you with on there. And when you have an outside resource helping you with design, the client gets really impressed with that too, right? Oh, these are some sound engineers put this together, and there's math involved, there's design involved, there's standards that are being met, and this is what it takes to do that. This is not my opinion, this is meeting a standard. The client, once you have some backup like that, is a lot more often to say yes, because there's actual engineering behind this and not just opinions. Because especially we have HTA certified integrators on there, you know who you're competing against and out there in your marketplace. A lot of these guys don't know anything about what we're talking about. And this is like a whole other realm of knowledge and professionalism. So using resources like this could really help differentiate you if that client is, talk to one of those other firms out there. So
I want to second what Paul said. I think the companies presented here and other ones that are not on this webinar come from a passion point, not from just commerce. By the way, if we wanted to do good commerce, we'd be in different businesses. We do this because we love it, and we have years and years of experience. Paul's been doing this forever. I mean, like dinosaurs were still roaming around when Paul started.
I think you just aged me.
You look good for a million years. So consider when you're picking a vendor for these things, be it speakers, amps, projectors, consider whether the company is going to be there to support you and support you with the design considerations, to support you during the installation, during the configuration, during the commissioning, as it's called in England or in the UK. And that's pretty key. Also consider that a second opinion is always good. So you may be thinking, I got this theater, there's these compromises, I've come up with this design. And on your own, you can do the best of what you can come up with. And then you show it to an outside party and they go, well, that's cool, but had you thought this other option? And like, wow, why didn't I think of that? That's what happens when you have a second opinion on the thing. And that's why it's nice to work with companies like the ones that are here, because we've all done it a number of different times, have a lot of experience in lots of different forms and formats of rooms and compromises. And we go, we did that same thing at this other room 2 years ago. Have you considered this? And it's like, cool. So pick partners, vendor partners in which there's technical chops and a willingness to help along and not just move boxes off their dock onto your dock. But actually help with good advice and expertise.
It's not your first rodeo, you guys, right? So yeah, that second opinion is really, really helpful. Something that popped in my mind and leading up to this as well, and this is HTA on our soapbox, and always finding good excuses for you out there, integrators, to have another touch point with your architects, designers, and builders, why you need to be involved early. Key subject here, right? So everyone out there, including the architects, designers, and builders, know that these video walls are a thing, right? They've arrived, and now more than ever, is there another excuse for you to say, here's why you need to bring me to your design team early. I want to be your design team partner for all things technology. And this is just a piece of that pie is if there's going to be a entertainment space, let's not even call it a home theater or media room, but just somewhere we're going to have a large display, even if it's a very casual space, we need to figure out where those speakers go. And my job as your integrator is to make sure that it sounds good and the speakers are as invisible as possible. And when you talk to them that way, they'll love you for it. But just another great reason, another excuse that is to go out there and be part of that early design team partner. And it's not too hard for them to understand that if they put this off to the end, then it could be an ugly visual compromise because they didn't think this through and bring you in early enough. So another feather in your cap for that sense. Also, going back to that question that was open about that Culver Theater, Lewis helped us with some information he found. He sent a link that's also down here in the webinar chat. So is there any points that we didn't talk about today that Paul or Anthony or Nick that you wanted to show?
I guess I'm going to keep saying that remember the dialogue clarity is really important. It's not impressive. Nobody's impressed by a voice that comes out clearly because when you're doing a demo, you want to hear the boom, boom, crash. That's the impressive part. But when you come down to it and you're sitting there watching a movie, maybe a movie in which people are Irish and they're on the beach in Ireland, there's a bunch of background noise. There's a particular movie I'm thinking about. And the dialogue gets a little hard to understand. You're out of the movie. Instead of being sucked into the action, you suddenly like looking at the person sitting next to you going, what did she just say? That's bad.
Nothing worse than having to sit through a film constantly turning the volume up and down.
Yeah.
Right. That's, I mean, I remember, back in my young days of literally, mucking around with speaker systems at home. And, you'd have to crank it up to hear the dialogue. And then as soon as an explosion happened, you're like, oh my God, the neighbors are going to be upset now. I've got to turn it back down again and then up, down, up, down. It's the most annoying thing ever. And you're right, the dialogue is key. I was in our showroom in London today, and we've got a 100-inch LED screen in there where we're, having to have speakers underneath it, beside of it, so on and so forth. And I was just sitting there just trying all different types of content. We haven't even launched and opened the showroom yet. So we're still kind of in this testing phase of just making sure that dialogue was just crystal clear. And we actually, another interesting story, which a colleague of mine told today in that demo was we had a project recently where the end user came to our showroom and he was really into Western movies. And he had a pair of, in his home existing, don't even know what brand they were, but generic in-wall loudspeakers. It's a stereo system because he has a projector screen which drops down right in front of a bay window, but then two pillars either side where the speakers are. That's what we were talking about at the beginning.
Familiar?
Yeah. And when he came to our showroom for a demo, he asked me to stream one of his favorite movies from YouTube via Bluetooth because that's how he watches his content.
Yikes.
Yay. Convenience over quality, because he wanted to hear what the dialogue in this particular question was, and I can't remember which one it was, sounded. And anyway, he ended up, saying yes to the integrator and going with an L-Acoustic solution. And one of our application engineers went to go and do the calibration, calibrated it to how, we calibrate our sound systems too. And then the next step is always then, right, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, come and listen to your sound system. Are you happy with it? Do you want any changes? And he said, it's much better than what I had before, but is there any way I can just get that dialogue any sharper? So within our calibration tools, we just said, yeah, we'll just increase the HF. It's not comfortable for our ears, but if it's comfortable for your ears, you're the customer, you're paying. Fill your boots, have what you want. And he wrote such a kind email afterwards to us as the manufacturer, because he had my contact details and from the integrator, and said, I just want to thank you so much because you've managed to, I can now enjoy these movies where I've never been able to do it before. And that was all as a result of that dialogue and being able to hear it.
So I'm curious, Nick, is L-Acoustics, do you guys include that service as part of the sale, or is that something that somebody can buy as an add-on, or how does L-Acoustics handle that?
It's a chargeable service. So whenever we'll do a design for a room, it will always be a line item on there. And we always insist, unless our integrators are trained and have carried out our training courses, that we do it on anything that is 5.1 or above.
Cool.
Yeah. And knowing Anthony, calibration is your thing. So that's so important. I remember, kind of funny, going to Nick's story back when I was an integrator. We had a famous musician. I won't say names, but we all know who he is if I said who he was. But he had so much hearing damage. And when we calibrated the system to industry spec, we were just stoked because, it had a big budget and he couldn't hear it. We were like throwing all the trick calibration off and making it sound like breaking glass to us. I mean, it just sounded like hell. But to him, it's like through us hearing loss. So sometimes you got to throw theory out the window. And
yeah, my experience with a bunch of the movie industry folks is they've been listening to the X curve at reference level for years and years and years, and a lot of those guys have pretty significant hearing loss. And I'll find some systems, like I went to the Mix magazine has an event in Culver City every year called Mix for Film and Television or something, Sound for Film and Television, I think. And it's at the Sony studios, and they have a bunch of different small post-production rooms, but they have some big dub stages and stuff. And I was there a couple years ago, and they had just deployed this new Atmos rig in the biggest one, the Cary Grant Theater. It's this massive dub stage with a 100-foot wide mixing console and stuff, and they were so proud of it. And the sound was so painful, like it was literally painful. And I'm just looking around at everybody going, wait a minute, why is nobody plugging their ears? Because it was like I wanted to leave, but I was in the middle and I couldn't get out without climbing over 25 people. And so I kind of concluded by the end that to them, they were kind of used to that sort of really aggressive kind of sound. And I think that their hearing had been affected so much, and I'm sure my hearing's been affected because I've been selling, very loud systems for years. But I do think that is an issue, right? Is you're kind of used to what you're used to, and it sounds, Nick, like you guys had to EQ that thing up to compensate for his particular ears, right? Yeah, and that's probably the most valuable part of the service you provided him, right? Is because you were able to make it clean and clear and intelligible for him. If he hadn't opted for that calibration option, he probably wouldn't have been able to understand.
Exactly. And we did the same thing for a record label exec recently in his home in California, where it was, again, not a tuning that we would have necessarily left on the system.
Right.
But it was the tuning that he loved and he wanted. So, hey, they're paying.
Yep. Yeah, I get it.
He's got to hear through his own hearing damage filter, right? And that's what it's coming down to.
Exactly.
We've just got a couple minutes left, and Expo is, just around the corner here. Can't believe it already. And I believe all three of you folks are exhibiting. Why don't you tell the listeners where you're at, your booth, and if there's anything in particular that you're going to be showing off. Paul, do you want to start off with that?
Sure. So we have a booth on the floor, 1943. Both Theory and Pro will be there. It's more focused towards Theory, but Pro will have some new stuff there. Something that's new for us is that at Infocom a couple months ago, we introduced a bunch of commercial products coming from Pro Audio Technology. So we're kind of sticking our toe into Nick's pond there a little bit.
Right, we go both ways.
Yeah, we're both interplaying with each other's main domains or whatever. So, and then downstairs on the same floor as your party, actually in high performance audio room 202, it's kind of the first one you'll see as you walk down the stairs to the street level. We'll have all kinds of Theory products and a bunch of Pro products that we play a number of different systems, different versions of systems. We won't be doing surround sound. We'll be doing mostly music. but using all kinds of different theory products and pro products, including the pro commercial products. So come by and see us. And then also, because it is our anniversary, we're having a little cocktail reception on Thursday, the first day at 4 p.m. So right before the HTS or the HTA party. Since we're just kind of down the hall from that, you can come see us at 4, have a beer, have a glass of champagne. And then at 5, you could walk down to the HTSA or the HTA party. Sorry about that.
Everybody said the
At 5, yeah. A lot of acronyms.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. All right. That's a check out. Anthony, what you got going on?
We're going to be showing. Actually, last year we had our big sound system in a demo room, what we called Sound Room 10, with some partners. This year we're going the other way around, which is to go, well, what do we do for smaller rooms? What's on the other side of the spectrum? And so we're in booth 3209 with a partner, and we'll be showing what to do when you've got a smaller room, like a 300 square foot space. We actually were wanting to demonstrate some of these solutions we talked about here today, and it ended up being too much work to get it all together, so we backed out of that idea. I want to make sure people realize how much effort manufacturers and exhibitors put out to do these shows. Paul just said something interesting. We're not demonstrating surround, we're going to demonstrate 2-channel music. Why? Because it's so much work to put together a surround sound room. It's enormous. And in reality, you should be able to tell from listening to a pair of speakers in stereo just how good they're going to work all the way around. So, expect to hear how good Paul speakers are just in stereo. And when you're hearing 2-channel demos, just learn how to translate that into what it's going to be in an immersive audio application, and understand that it can be $100,000 to put together a really impressive home theater demo at CEDIA by the time you count all the time, all the building, all the shipping, it's huge.
More than that.
So
yeah, it is more than that.
or more than that. I know another manufacturer who spent a little more than that. So just if you hear a demo of a good pair of speakers in 2-channel and it translates up into your custom integration into multiple channels, just learn that's really cool, because now you're hearing other attributes you may lose if you're in a room with a lot of stuff going on.
Exactly, which I want to chime in. That's why we do it, right? Is we play different combinations of products, sometimes just 2 speakers, sometimes 4 speakers, sometimes 4 speakers and subs, 6 speakers and subs. But we play everything individually. So you hear what this model does, you hear what that model does, you hear what this model does. If you just play a movie with 8 different models all at the same time, it's very difficult to discern what any individual loudspeaker could do. And so that's why we do it. Not to diminish the surround sound demos. We did those for years. Those are great too. We just can't do it all, right? We don't have enough time or enough space. But I'm curious to hear what Nick's got up his sleeve.
So you'll find L-Acoustics at booth 4316. The last year we dipped our toe into having a immersive surround sound experience, but it wasn't an open-sided booth due to limitations that are a trade show floor and all the rest of it. It was very well received, but people wanted to experience more. So this year we will have a closed room on the booth, which we are. You're more than welcome to reach out to myself or my colleague in the US, Kevin Lehrman, to book a demonstration in slot for that to avoid the queues. It will be a 9.1.6 Atmos room using our Soka collinear speakers. Last year we were using 8-inch point source for our front channels. We will have a total of 7 subwoofers in that room. There'll be 4 12-inch, 3 10-inch. Our new X8i and X6i point source loudspeakers for our heights and surrounds, all driven from LA7.16i, which is our amp, which I absolutely love and really geek out on. Sorry to everyone that's not excited by amps, but it's a 16-channel amplifier that delivers 1300 watts per channel in a 2U rack chassis. That will be connected via AES67 directly into a Storm Audio ISP Mark III. So very excited to be showing that. And obviously we'll have partners. We've got projection from Barco, screen from Stuart's Film Screen, Kaleidoscape etc. So very excited to be seeing that come to life, hopefully. As Anthony and Paul have both said, the work that goes into these shows, it's scary, but yeah, not long away now, and so we're hoping it will all be there, perfect and ready for everyone to enjoy.
Well, awesome. Great things to look forward to. I look forward to checking all these out myself. Some of the highlight of the show is hearing and seeing these great systems. And so thank you so much to our 3 panelists here. Learned a lot. I hope our audience, I'm sure, got a lot of interesting feedback, design ideas, and realizing you have experts at your disposal here as a second opinion, or just throw it out there and learn from years and years of real world experience. So thank you for tuning in. And before you go, if you haven't clicked on, take a screenshot of the webinar chat where you have some resources at your fingertips. So you've got our panelists' emails. We got a link to the rest of the webinar series that HTA is doing this year, and a reminder to register to our party that we're doing right after Paul's party on the 5th at 5 to 7 p.m. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And you will, on our normal YouTube super secret channel that you'll know about if you're HTA dealer, this webinar will be recorded. Once it's done and edited, it'll be up there in the Mindshare series of webinars. So you could learn from this if you missed something or want to review it. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day. See you next time. See you at CEDIA.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.